Hello, Mario here. This is the third video of a three-part video series on how to use Adobe Animate Pro. This is the simplest of the three videos. It's basically where we're going to do motion animation, or tweens. It's basically just moving items across the screen. So as an example, you can move a cloud across the screen, or you can move a jet across the screen, right? You can even rotate items. Okay. What the plan is today is we're going to first cover some tips, so we know what to look out for and how to set things up so we don't run into problems. Then we're going to talk a little bit about timing, because we want to control how fast things move across the screen. Then we'll actually jump into the software and create a motion tween or motion graphics. Okay, and I'll show you how to retime it. So if you want to make it faster or if you want to make it slower, we'll be able to. Hope you like this video. So again, in this video, we're just going to cover how to move things across the screen. It's not a lot, but there's a little bit of things that we have to understand first. So let's cover some tips. Tip 1, keep it simple. Remember, you're just learning, right? So don't try to make these elaborate items. Try this process first with something simple, and then next time add a little bit more detail to it, and it'll get better. Whenever you're using any software, remember to save often. You don't want to lose your work. Move on to tip number 3. When you start working with these assets, like a cloud, you don't want to mess up your background or your other frame-by-frame animation. So lock all the layers except the one that you want to work with. So if it is a cloud, lock everything except the cloud, all the layers. If you are animating a cloud, again, back to that example, make sure the cloud is on its own layer with nothing else. Anything we move across the screen, we want it on its own layer. Once that cloud is on its own layer, we want to show it, we want it on screen for a long time. So we have to create a long hold to show that on screen for a long time. Then at that point, with the transform tool, we can actually turn it into a symbol, turn that symbol into a motion tween, and then we can move it across the screen through time. With regards to timing, if you want something to move across the screen slowly, use lots of frames. If you want something to move across the screen quickly, use less frames. So maybe we should talk about timing first. So as I said earlier, when working with timing, if you want something on screen for a long time, we need lots of frames. Okay, so if we want something to move slowly, use lots of frames. If you want something to move across the screen quickly, use less frames. Now, how does that compare with regular frame-by-frame animation? Well, frame-by-frame animation is actually pretty quick with regards to drawings. Drawings are only on screen for 2 frames. This is what's called animating on 2s. So every drawing is shown for 2 frames. So lots of drawings, but for a very short amount of time. We're now talking about motion animation, or motion graphics even. This is one drawing or one image that we move across the screen. So it's the same image. So it's only one drawing. So let's take this for an example. If we were to show numbers on screen and only show them for 2 frames per number, so we're going to count from 1 to 9, and each of those numbers are going to be on screen for 2 frames, like an animation, like hand-drawn frame-by-frame animation. What would that look like? Well, it's actually pretty quick. This is counting from 1 to 9. And the only number you're really seeing is number 5. Why? Well, I put all the numbers on screen for 2 frames. But the number 5, I held longer for 8 frames. So number 5 is on screen longer because it's on for 8 frames, where all the other numbers are only on screen for 2 frames. So they whip right by really quick. So this is what we call timing. Now, how does timing look like if you're working with motion graphics or tweening? Well, here we have 2 clouds. One is whipping by, and it's on screen for 20 frames. But the cloud above it is a lot slower, and it's on screen for 40 frames. So you could see more frames is slower. Okay, the top cloud that's moving slowly is on screen for 40 frames, and I'm moving it across the screen in those 40 frames. The bottom little cloud, I have it only on screen for 20 frames. And it's moving across really quickly because it's only got 20 frames to get across the screen. So less frames is faster, more frames is slower. Hope that helps. So the hotkeys I'm going to be using today, zoom in, zoom out is Control minus or Control plus. Control plus to zoom in, Control minus to zoom out. If you're on an Apple, Command minus, Command plus. And spacebar to move the stage around. With regards to timing, we use F6 to add a new keyframe that will create a start point or an end point for that motion graphics. And we'll use F5 to have something on screen longer. So there's a couple of hotkeys for you. F6 to create key points of where this item is going to end up, and F5 to extend the hold so it's on screen longer. Another handy hotkey to use is Shift F5 to shorten the hold. So you'll see me use that one as well. Now, before we start moving things across the screen or changing anything, let's lock down everything that we have that we're not going to change anymore. So in my case, I have a jet, I have some land, I have a background, and I have a sky. So what I'm reading is all these layers right here. So I don't want to change my background. I don't want to change the sky. So what I'm doing over here is I'm locking all the layers. See the arrows? I'm locking all those layers so that I don't break anything. The only thing I want to work with are these clouds over here. Okay, clouds 1 and clouds 2. So I'm leaving those unlocked. But I am locking everything else so I don't break anything. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to now get ready to move this cloud across the sky. When we move it, we're actually going to use the transform tool. So you can see see the tool up here. Okay, that's the transform tool. That's the tool we're going to use. But what we need to do first is we need to get these clouds to show on screen longer. If you're looking at that timeline, the clouds themselves are only on screen for 1 frame, and you saw how fast things are on 2 frames. Can you imagine 1? That's ridiculously fast. You can see the background is being held for a long time, and that's what we're going to want with our clouds. So we're going to want to extend that hold, and then we're going to move it across the screen. So let's give that a try. So here I am in the software, and you can see my background is playing for a long time, but my clouds up here are only on screen for a short time. So watch what happens when I hit play. See, the clouds will just flash on screen for a split second. You barely even see them. Okay, they're there. They're popping up on screen. So what I'm going to do is let's work with cloud 1. So I'm going to even lock cloud 2. And cloud 1, let's say I want it on screen for the same time as our background. Our background's going to frame 60. So on cloud 1 layer, I'm going to go to frame 60, click on that frame, and hit F5. Now you can see that cloud 1 is on screen for the whole time. Cloud 2 is still flashing. So let's do the same with cloud number 2. So go on cloud 2, let's unlock it and lock clouds 1. And I'm going to go to the very far side, frame 60 on cloud 2, and hit F5 again. If F5 is not working for you, you could right click and use insert frame. See the F5? Insert frame. There you go. So now both clouds are on screen for the whole time. All right, so now let's make cloud 1 move across the screen. So I click on cloud 1, unlock it. Okay, so I'm on the very first frame. Grab my transform tool, and I'm going to right click cloud 1, the frame 1 on cloud 1. Right click it, and I'm going to create a motion tween. So when I create a motion tween, it's going to turn my cloud into a symbol. So there you go. It's that asking, you have to convert it to a symbol to move it across the screen. So just hit OK. So now it's a symbol, and you can see that the color has changed on that layer. Now if I hit play, nothing's really changed. Everything looks the same. But what I can do now is I can go to frame 40 on cloud 1, again with my transform tool, and I can move cloud 1 right across the sky. And you can see these individual frames, these dots are individual frames. So now when I hit play, cloud 1 is moving across the sky in 40 frames. Now let's say we want cloud 2 to be moving across the screen, but maybe a bit slower. So let's do the same with cloud 2. So I lock cloud 1, unlock cloud 2. Again, transform tool, click on frame 1, right click, create a motion tween. This is going to turn it into a symbol. And we're going to go all the way to frame 50. So this one's going to be more frames, so it's actually going to be a little slower. So on frame 50 of cloud 2, with my transform tool, I'm going to move it across the screen. And we'll hit play again. So you can see cloud 2 is just a little bit slower. Okay, so that wasn't too difficult, I hope. Let's talk about retiming. So we're looking at cloud 1 is moving pretty quickly. It's the top one. It's moving quicker than cloud 2. Let's say we want cloud 2 even slower. And let's say we want cloud 1 even faster. This is how we retime. This is what we're doing. We're going to retime this. So again, let's jump into the software. And here's where I'm going to use F5 to make cloud 2 slower. So I click in between this key and this key. So I'm clicking in the middle between these two keys. So I'm on cloud 2, and I'm going to hit F5, and you're going to see it's pushing this key. See how it's pushing the keys? So now cloud 2 is going to take 55 frames instead of 50 frames. So this is even more frames, so it's going to be even slower. Cloud 1, let's say we want that faster. So I unlock it, click in the middle between the two keys, and I'm going to use Shift F5 to bring the keys closer together. That way, these two keys, when they're closer together, the cloud is going to move faster. And what I'm going to do, just so it looks good, is I'm going to extend this hold, just so it stays on screen. F5. All right, so we sped up. We sped up cloud 1, and we slowed down cloud 2. So if we want the clouds going the same speed, then we have to get these to line up. So I can F5 to push it, and Shift F5 to pull it closer. Those are going to be pretty quick. So as long as we keep them together, let's go to 50. Let's keep them, as long as they're together, both clouds will move at the same speed. So moving items across the screen, or motion tweens, or motion graphics, they're not that difficult. But understanding timing is pretty important. You can see how I use that quite often. So let's review those tips. Keep it simple, right? When you're learning, keep it simple, try things, experiment a bit, and then as you get better, add a little bit more detail and try new things. Save often, because you don't want to lose your work. Lock the layers that you're not working with. That way you don't break your background or you break other things. If you plan to move an object across the screen, put it on its own layer. When that object is on its own layer, make sure we set a hold so it's on screen for the whole time. When I was moving that object around, I was using the transform tool, not the select tool. So remember the transform tool. And with regards to timing, more frames means it'll be slower. If we move it across the screen in less frames, it's going to be faster. I hope this video was good for you. Enjoy.